So to summarize Dean's question here, we're looking for a bounce signal. Yeah, basically this is a customized bounce signal here. So the three requirements, is that the faster moving average needs to be above the slower moving average, right? For a long setup, for a long signal, the faster MA needs to be above the slower MA. And when the bounce occurs, then the CCI needs to be oversold. So, of course, all of this stuff is subjective and can be adjusted. So whatever you're considering to be overbought or oversold for the CCI can be adjusted. I'm going to use 100 and -100 just to keep it simple, and so I can find signals more easily. So, but of course you can adjust those threshold numbers for the CCI, for being oversold or overbought as you see fit. So there's the two indicator requirements. All right, the fast MA above the slow, and the CCI being oversold for a long setup. And then the third requirement is basically, the bounce signal there, right? Yeah, so with that, let's get started. All right, let's see. Well, actually, I still need to create a file name for today. All right, so today's the 17th. So there we go. Okay, so once we have a file name, now all of our work will start being saved to that file. So next, I'm going to switch over to the Logic tab, and let's start with a new Logic template. Let's see. All right, so we're looking for an EMA30 bounce, and we're using a CCI counter trend filter. So the easy part is going to, determine, the signal direction by looking at the two EMAs there. So, all right, so making sure that the faster EMA is above the slower one, that's a comparison, right? We're comparing one EMA to the other to see which one's above and which one's below. So let's connect that in. And then also let's name our node. All right, so we've got a name in there, so now let's change our inputs here to the EMA. So for input A, that'll be the faster EMA. So there's our EMA. Adjust the period to 10, and that's all we have to do. And for input B, we're going to do the same thing. Set up the EMA, and then change the period to the 30. So, all right, let's see here. So let me close that, and yeah, so this is just that benign index out of range error, which again, we're still working on that, trying to figure out, we've kind of narrowed it down to basically NinjaTrader's not calculating the indicator fast enough for BloodHound. So we've tried putting in some delays in BloodHound, waiting for NinjaTrader to catch up. So that's the most common cause, we think, for this index out of range. It's just that the indicator is not being calculated quick enough before BloodHound goes to grab the data. So the easy solution for those is you just do a simple reload and everything gets fixed, right? Then NinjaTrader. So once you do a reload, doing a reload, forces NinjaTrader to calculate all the indicators being used, and then there's no more missing index anymore. So, all right. So as we can see, right, when the fast EMA is above the slow EMA, right, we have a long output, and vice versa, we have a short output. So, all right, so that's our trend direction there, and our signal direction as well. So, all right, so we have that. And next the next easy thing to do is to check whether the CCI is oversold or overbought. So to do that, let's grab a threshold solver. Connect that in. All right, and so we are looking for a long output. We're looking for negative 100, right, or below negative 100. And for a for short output, we're looking for the CCI to be above 100, positive 100. So let's change our input to the CCI. All right, there's the CCI, and I'm just using the 14 period. All right, so good enough. Okay, next let's put our threshold levels in. So remember, the threshold levels need to be in descending order. So we have to put 100 on top, and we're going to put 100 in twice to get rid of the fuzzy logic output. And then C, we're going to leave that at 0, and then D and E are going to be the negative 100 threshold level. Right? So we want to, right? So we're looking for a long signal when the CCI is at negative 100 or less. So for the long output, we want less than 100. So we're going to put a 1 there, right? And there you go. We can see we're getting a long output whenever the CCI goes below 100. And then for a short output, we want the opposite, right? Greater than positive 100. So we'll set a 1 there, right? So, the easy thing to remember is that the majority of the times, like, 95, 98% of the time, your outputs are going to be opposite of each other, right? So if your long output is using the less than, then the majority of the time your short output will be using the greater than, right? Or vice versa, right? If your long output is using the greater than, then typically your short output is going to be using the less than. Okay, so there is basically our two kind of filters, and if we want, we can start grabbing an AND node and connecting those in, right? And so there we go. So now we can see, like right here, when the CCI is oversold, there's no long output anymore, right? Because the EMAs are, in a short trend position. But then over here, we can see for 3 bars here, when the CCI is oversold, well, the EMAs, are crossed above, and so we do get that long output there. So, all right, so we have the trend filters in place. Well, the trend filter, and then also a secondary CCI filter there, the counter trend filter. So now we need to work on the bounce, right? The signal bounce part of it, right? So this is the subjective part where you're going to have to figure out exactly what your definition of a bounce looks like, right? Bounces are very subjective. And so I will just kind of keep it simple because I was not provided any details on what a bounce looks like. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to make sure that, price is above the EMA30, for X number of bars. And let's see, in order for this bounce to work, really, price did not get very much high above like it did over here. We can see that price got a little higher, and made a nicer looking bounce, but the CCI didn't work with us, so that's not going to generate a signal there. So again, you're going to have to figure out, what type, how far away do you need price to get from your EMA to make a clean looking bounce? Do you need that distance, or is this good enough? a really short distance, what is the requirements there. All right, so to check, that price, has moved away from your moving average, far enough, that is going to be another comparison solver, right? So in this case, right, we're comparing price, right? Basically, the bottom of the bar, so the low price, needs to be X distance away from your EMA, right, to create that bounce kind of pattern there. Right? That's what you're looking for, right? So let's see here. Let's give this a name here. So for a long bounce, we're going to check the low price. And so if it's a short bounce, we're going to check the high price and then compare that to the EMA 30. Actually, let's see here. Yeah, it looks like in order for this signal to work out, I think 2-point clearance is probably as much as I'm going to get there. So I'm going to make sure that the higher the low is at least 2 points away from the EMA 30. All right, so input A, that's going to be price. So let's change the type over to price. And then, if it's a long bounce, we're using the low of the bar, right? We're making sure the low of the bar gets, a certain distance away. And for a short, it'll be the opposite, right? It'll be the high price. So there. All right. Now, I said I was going to use points instead of ticks. So let's switch our measurement unit over to points, like so. And I'll start off with 2 points, and we'll see how this works out. So, all right, then input B, well, that's going to be our EMA 30 there. Right. So let's go plug in the EMA 30. All right, there's the EMA 30. And so we can see that actually only a couple of bars here managed to get a 2-point distance away. So, I don't know, maybe this is a bad example for a bounce. Yeah, so we'll skip that one. We'll try and find a better example there. Let's see, and let me go back to that short bounce that I had found back here. Here we go. There we go. Here's that short. So, all right. Yeah, so we can see, previously, price was more than 2 points away. So, let's see if 3 points still works. Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, so I'll put, 2.5 points in there. Just so we get a signal. So, all right. And so another thing that you can do, right, because you can see that, sometimes, you might get 1 or 2 bars that don't meet your distance requirement, prior to price moving in to the, pulling back to the moving average, right? So what we can do to account for, for this one single bar here, to allow for that single bar, to not meet its distance requirements, we can use the signal counter. And so if we use the signal counter here, then what we can do, right, here's where we can really kind of create a little more variance. We can allow for, variance in price, in the price movement there, in the price action. So we can say, we need at least 5 bars, to have this 2.5 point clearance. So actually, you know what? Let's knock that up to 3 points. We'll exaggerate this a little bit more here. All right. So we need at least 3 bars, or I'm sorry, we need at least some bars with a 3-point clearance there. And oh, sorry. There, I should be looking at the comparison solver there. Yeah. All right. So with the 3-point clearance, now I can see I've actually got 2 bars that don't meet that 3-point clearance. Right, 2 bars there. So with the signal counter, I'm looking for, so the counting up to is how many bars I'm looking for minimum with that 3-point clearance. Right? And the look back period is saying, you know, I need 5 bars minimum within X number of bars. So let's say 8 bars. So within the last 8 bars, I need at least 5 of those bars to have that 3-point clearance. Right? So you can add some, you know, so you can create an allowance, you know, for some of the bars not meeting that 3-point clearance. So yeah, so now when we look at this, right, this is here, let me get rid of that square. All right, so there's our signal. Right. So if we look at the difference here, right, so we have so that bar there didn't meet, right, didn't meet the 3-point clearance, and that bar did not meet the 3-point clearance. But within our 8-bar look back period, right, but in looking back within the last 8 bars, right, it did meet, you know, we do have at least 5 bars out of the last 8 bars that have that 3-point clearance. So let's see, I'll probably tighten this up here. Let's see, within the last 7 bars there. There. So I'll tighten that up, right? So this part is obviously very subjective as to how you want to define, you know, your bounces there, right? So some people might want more than 3 points of clearance, right? So some people might want, you know, whatever this distance is, right? That's much greater than 3 points. Let's check that out. Let's check 5 points. Yeah, there we go. So that's, you know, so all these bars were at least 5 points away. You know, so if you need, you know, price to move that far away, you know, then we can do that. Yeah. And so if we look at the signal counter, yeah, there. So the signal counter, you know, we can see it does pull, right? So here, let's see. So here's the last bar that meets the 5-point distance, right? The 5-point clearance. But with the signal counter, since it's saying, hey, I only need 5 bars within the last 7, right? It effectively pulls your signals forward, right? So we can see this. Oh, let's see. Also, sorry. Let me change the output from analog to digital. There we go, right? So remember, this was the last bar that had our 5-point clearance, and then, but our short output gets extended 2 additional bars, right, because of that 7-bar look back period. So yeah, so I guess for the sake of explanation and illustration, I will keep this, yeah, I'll keep this stricter requirement of a 5-point gap for now, just to illustrate here. So the signal counter and our comparison solver, is checking for that minimum distance, right? That minimum clearance between price and the moving average. And the signal counter is allowing us, a little variance there, so that we don't need, 5 bars in a row. It can be 5 bars within the last 7, right? So the next step is, once our 5-point clearance has been found, the next step is to get this condition, right? So what we're looking at is that 5-point clearance. We found that 5-point clearance, and now we need to take this output and extend it forward enough bars for the bounce to occur. Right, so we can see that the bounce occurs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars later. Right, so I will need to now take a signal extender and now tag that onto the front. And let's see, the signal extender defaults to extending for 5 bars. so there we go. So now we have, right, this clearance condition now extended all the way until price touches, touches the EMA. Okay. So again, this is a subjective nature. How many bars, does it take for your chart to get from the 5-point clearance, to the bar that actually, maybe not touch, but get within, within close enough range, to be considered the bar that's touching and bouncing, right? So, let's see here. So I'm going to turn off the resets for the signal extender. Let's see here. Let me name this. All right, so this is doing a 5-bar extender. There. All right, and our signal counter, let's see, that is currently set to 5 of 7 bars. There. Yeah, I'll just call it 5 of 7 bars. There. Okay. Oh, and my comparison solver, so I adjusted it to 5 points. So remember, you should go in and adjust the name accordingly when you make those adjustments. So there we go. All right, so this comparison solver is now, the name is updated to 5 points. So there. All right. Okay, so this is, our price clearance, check that needs to happen prior to price, getting close enough to your EMA. So the next thing we need, so let's move that back, and actually that can be connected into the AND node now. So we're going to need another comparison solver, right? So to make sure that price gets within, right, a certain range of your moving average, we're going to compare the high of the bar, also probably compare the close of the bar, and the high of the bar to the EMA, right? making sure that price did get within, a certain range to be considered an actual bounce. So off of that. So let's see. So let's compare. So it would be the low price for a long signal, and the high of the bar for a short signal. And let's see. I guess I'll just do one point. Yeah, it needs to get within 1 point. I guess that sounds good. To the EMA30. All right, so once again, let's set up our inputs here. So input A is again going to be the low of the bar or the high of the bar. And all right, I'm changing my measurement units to points again. Of course, you could use ticks, whatever, points or ticks, doesn't matter. Whatever you think is appropriate. And then input B is going to be the EMA30. All right, EMA, put in the 30 period. There we have it. All right, and so what we want is we want the A equals B within 1 point. Right? That's the condition we're looking for. Is right A. So in this case, A is the high price of the bar, and we need it to equal the EMA within 1 point. Right? So the high has to be within 1 point of the EMA. And we can see it is. So there we go. Right? Now, sometimes your high price might punch through too far. So you'll need to check some other prices of the bar. So let's also see if the closing price of the bar gets within 1 point. Right? So I'm going to switch over to the solvers tab, and I can take this solver that I just made here, make a copy of it, and I can switch it over so that this solver is looking at the closing price of the bar. So there we go. So now we're also comparing the close of the bar as well. In case the wick, gets extended too far away. So let's put, there we go. So from the existing nodes, there is that new node I just made, the close 1 point away from the EMA30. So I can put that down here. Right. Now with these comparison solvers, we don't care which price gets within that 1 point range, right? It can be either the high and or the closing price. So in this situation, we're going to use an OR node. So because it doesn't matter which of these solvers, gives us that proximity output. All right, either one could be fine. And also, depending on the bar types, maybe you need a third price, like maybe the wick might be too far away and the close might be too far away. The close might be on one extreme end and the high might be on another extreme end. So maybe you need to also look at the median of the bar. Maybe the middle of the bar might be, within that 1 point range. So I guess, what the heck, we might as well add the median. Right? So you're just going to have to look through your charts, at all those bounce signals, and figure out, which bar prices, are getting within, this minimum range here, to the moving average, so that you can verify that price has actually gotten close enough, or touched that moving average. All right, so let's switch those over to the median there. All right, so there's 3 different prices we got. Maybe you might need more, you just have to verify all that. So let's go to our existing nodes once again, and there's the median price compared to the EMA30. So let's drop that on the board, connect that in. All right, and there we go. So okay, now I'm building this on an 8 range chart, so this is probably going to work out pretty conveniently. But yeah, here's some good examples here. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. So here's some good examples, right, where the close, right, is obviously, basically almost right on the EMA. Let's see, this would be the high is right next to the EMA, and the close of the bar again is right next to the EMA. And so for this bar, let's see, the low is next to the EMA. Yeah, so here the high of the bar is within 1 point of the EMA. And actually maybe 1 point is, yeah, maybe 1 point's too long of a distance. I don't know. That's a very subjective, adjustment that you'll have to figure out. So here we go. So here's what I wanted to find. So here is 2 bars where the median is definitely within that 1 point range, of the moving average. Right. So, I guess, maybe with 3 different prices that we're checking here, you might be able to tighten up, this distance here. So instead of this 1 point distance, you might be able to tighten it up. But anyways, I'll just leave it at 1 point. So now that we have our condition, right, that verifies that price got close enough, right, close enough to the moving average, for a bounce. So now we can connect that in. And so we're getting there, right? We're getting there. So things are looking kind of clean. So the last thing you might want is to verify the bar direction. So again, this is something that's subjective, right? So on this bar, right, we can see it is a down bar, so it's facing down. But on this signal, right, we got a signal on the up bar, so is price just going to punch right through and keep going up, or do you want to wait for price to reverse before getting the short signal, right? So if you want to wait for price to reverse, then what we need to do is, let's see here. Yeah, So we're going to grab a look back node, and let's see, we don't want the displacement, but we're going to set create a 2-bar look back, and we're going to use the max mode here. So all right, so we're looking back 2 bars. Right, so effectively, you know, this is acting like a signal extender, right? So now you can see we get 2 bars here, right? 2 bars. And so, right, so the second bar is to give, you know, to allow for the next bar to reverse in the correct direction, right? So the first bar, right, it's an up bar, and so if we want to wait for a down bar, then we took the touch signal, extended it 1 extra bar to wait to see if the next bar reverses down. And so now we can grab a bar direction solver and then combine that with an AND node, like so. Right? So over here, right, we can see, so the signal is no longer on the up bar, but the signal instead is on the down bar. Now, we can see that what might happen sometimes is, you know, you might get 2 signals in a row. So, you know, generally speaking, you know, that's not going to mess anything up, getting 2 signals in a row. You know, if you're going to try and auto trade this or back test this, you know, the strategy, either Raven or Blackbird, right, it'll enter on the first bar, and it's only going to place 1 trade, right? So it's not going to put 2 trades in. So having a double signal is fine. But if you do want to clean that up, right, if you do only want to see 1 signal and you want to clean that up, then we can just add a signal blocker here at the very end. And so with the signal blocker, we only need to block for 1 bar, right? Because there's the possibility is that there's only 2 bars in a row with the signal, so we only need to block 1 bar. And we don't need any of the resets. We'll just turn the resets off, like so. There. Right, and there we go. So we can clean that up. So, right. You know, if you don't need the signal blocker, you know, then just delete it. Yeah, if you don't want the signal blocker, just delete it. That way, you know, BloodHound's not having to do extra calculations that are unnecessary. So, you know, it's just a part of the concept of keeping your templates clean, lean, and clean, so they run as fast as possible. Right. So if you don't want the signal counter, just delete it. So otherwise, you know, keep it in there and keep it connected up. So, yeah, so that's it. So, so let's kind of review, you know, the concepts here of a bounce signal again. All right. So really, it's these 2 components here are what's detecting the bounce. Yeah, the bounce part. Right. So the let me grab my result node. There we go. Right. So the middle section here, right, this is verifying that price moved away from your moving average a minimum distance, right? And that's what, that's what cleans up this garbage here. So that way, when price is consolidating basically on the mean, so the technical term would be price consolidating on the mean, so in order to eliminate this from generating a bounce signal, right, your eyes know, obviously this is not conducive for a bounce signal, but when you see price pulling away from your moving average or from your mean, then you're ready to start looking for price pulling back to the mean for that possible bounce signal, right? So that's what this middle section is doing, is it is finding, it's finding that price separation, right, which basically prevents consolidation from generating a bounce signal, right? Because you could see without checking for this clearance, then you would definitely get some bounce signals right there and there, some garbage kind of bounce signals. So, and then the bottom component here, the OR node. So after we've verified that price has moved a certain distance away, then the next part of a bounce is looking for price to get close enough to your moving average, for that bounce. So, all right, so we're looking for price to pull back in to the mean, for that bounce. And then the last step is, maybe or maybe not, you might want to verify the bar direction has reversed and that, that the bar is showing that price is moving away from the mean. So maybe you need that, maybe you don't. Right? So if you want, a more conservative approach is making sure that price is moving away, right? That the bar direction is away. But if you want a more liberal approach, then all you need is just the AND node, right? So that would be a more liberal approach where you're getting signals on up bars. And let's see here. Yeah, I was trying to see if I could find some examples where, you get a signal and then price just keeps on going up, but I'm sure it's in there, but instead I'm going to focus on this. Let's take a look as to why there was no signal here. Right? I mean, that looks like a classic bounce setup there, but there was no signal. So let's figure out what's going on here. So, yeah, so, okay, so we do have our clearance here. Oh, no, we don't have our clearance. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So, yeah, so this last little move away only had 4 bars. 4 bars with that 5-point clearance, right? So there weren't enough bars, So again, that kind of goes back to the subjective nature, of the signal counter. How many bars of separation do you need? So in order to, allow this to become a bounce signal, so if this looked good enough, for a bounce, well, then we need to reduce the requirements there. So we would have to say, okay, only 4 bars out of the last 7. All right. So let's take a look at this now. So yeah, there we go. So now we have that separation clearance. Right. So if I go back to the signal counter, if I adjust that to 5 bars, right, there we go. So our clearance, stopped right there and didn't get to the bar that actually touched. So again, this is a good example of how you just have to go through and fine tune these adjustments here to what you think is appropriate. So maybe 4 out of 6 bars, to reduce the requirements, to reduce it so it's not as stringent there. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. Okay. So there. So now we get, the 2 bars that, might possibly bounce. Yeah, this brings up another good point here, right? So it took price, several bars, before it actually bounced off the MA. So not all bounces are nice and clean, but we have 2 signals there. And so we could use, the signal blocker to clean that up, right? So with the signal blocker, we only used it to clean up, the 2 signal possibilities, the 2 bar. Yeah, here we go, right? So the signal blocker currently only cleans up the double down bars, right? The 2 signals when there's 2 down bars in a row, sorry. But we could use the signal blocker to also kind of clean up, when price, does this kind of consolidation action for a few bars, and then it bounces off. So with the signal blocker, we could increase the blocking signals for, let's say, so maybe, when we get a signal, we don't want to see any more bounce signals for the next 10 bars, right? So maybe, you might think to yourself that there's at least a 10 bar minimum for the next bounce setup, right? So, and again, that kind of goes in conjunction with your signal counters look back period and your signal extenders, extending period. So your signal blocker, should be somewhat in tune with your signal counters, look back period, and your signal extenders, extension period, right? So they should be somewhat in line with each other. There's no exact formula for this. Again, this is all very super subjective, so there's no exact formula, but you probably can see how you want to kind of keep those, in line with each other, to some extent. So, yeah. So, all right, so there we go. So there's kind of another situation that might happen that you can take care of, clean up. All right, so let's see what else we got here before we wrap this up. Yeah, so again, we didn't get a signal here, and my guess is price probably didn't have a 5-point clearance. Well, actually, these bars are 2 points. Yeah, so that does not look like a 5-point clearance. If each bar is 2 points in length, yeah, there was not enough clearance there. So again, if you wanted to see a signal there, that's a matter of going back to our comparison solver that's finding that clearance or verifying the clearance for us. And yeah, so when we look at this comparison solver, right, we can see that, yeah, there was only a couple of bars with that 5-point clearance. And, it took quite a while after that 5-point clearance. It took quite a while, before price came in and approached. So, so again, fine-tuning what that clearance needs to be, but also you could, so we do have a 5-point clearance, but that's only 2 bars, as well. That's only 2 bars. So once again, that, if this should have been, obviously we can see that this wasn't a very good bounce, but, maybe it could have bounced, so if you wanted to create a bounce signal here, again, that's a matter of going back and maybe adjusting this 5-point clearance, right? Or maybe adjusting, the number of bars that you need with that 5-point clearance, within, how far of a look back period, and then also, possibly needing to extend that 5-point clearance a little further, out, more than 5 bars. Maybe you need to extend out 7 bars to compensate, for this kind of consolidation that happens that's less than 5 bars. 5 bars of clearance, right? So, again, there's a lot of fine-tuning that gets involved, with finding these bounce signals there. Actually, let's just connect that up here. And yeah, let me. You can see that here was a bounce, but looking at the CCI, was basically right at the 0 line there. So a little trick here that we can do is, let's see here. Let's see. I'm basically going to take this, this trend and CCI filter. Let's see here. Yeah. Right. So basically these two filters here, right? The moving average and the CCI filters, I can give myself basically like a heads up as to why some of these might not be detected as a bounce. there. So what I can do is, right, I can take this filter here. So let's just give this a name, right? So this is our filter. This other AND node is basically the bounce. The bounce, setup. I guess, yeah, setup would be more appropriate. The second AND node is the actual bounce because it's requiring, the bar to reverse direction. So there we go. So we name these here, right? So this is the potential bounce setup. And then once we add a signal direction or a bar direction, then we actually get a cleaner bounce signal. So, all right, but so this AND node showing us the filters, what we can do, so we can connect that in there, connect our signal blocker in there, and on this AND node, I'm actually going to use the slider here. And I'll knock this down a little bit. There. There. And so what happens is I can see the filter output. And so this tells me that, the CCI is overbought and my moving averages are, in the correct alignment there. So if I don't see this output, when price pulls in for these bounces, it tells me, oh, well, that's probably because of the CCI filter, right? That's the CCI filter right there. And then let's see if I can actually find a bounce signal here. There we go. Yeah. So here's a long bounce signal, right? And then I can also see when the CCI is in the oversold area, to tell me that if, that I could get a bounce there. So. Yeah, if we look at this right here, right, we didn't actually get a signal. And that's because, price actually punched through and it took 3 bars before price reversed, right? So we have 2 down bars, where the bars are touching the moving average. And then it was the 3rd bar that actually reversed, so again, not a lot of subjective nature to this. So, if you wanted to allow for, 3 bars, to reverse, before we get a bar that reverses in the direction of the signal, then what we could do is go to our look back node, right? So remember, it's our actually, if we look at the look back node, let's see. Actually, it looks like we're not getting a signal at all. Oh yeah, we're not even getting a signal. Oh, there must not be the 5-point clearance. Yeah, there must not have been enough clearance there. Yeah, we did get enough clearance here. Over here we got that clearance, but there was no 5-point clearance there. So again, you have to fine tune what clearance you want to allow for. And yeah, so we can see, right, we have all these up bars, up bars, up bars. So if you look at, so what are we looking at right now? Right, we're looking at the bounce setup, right? So the bounce setup doesn't care what the bar direction is, but once we add the bar direction in, then we can see the signals go away. So there was no bounce signal there, once we add in the bar directions, right? And let's take a look what happened there. My guess is we didn't have enough bars with clearance. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we did get 4. Let's see, let me adjust this here. So it's 4. Currently it's 4 out of 6 there. All right, so we're looking at the signal counter. Right, we're looking at the signal counter here. So yeah, so we do have our clearance. And there's our, oh, sorry. The CCI. Yeah, jeez. That should have been obvious. That should have been obvious. Yeah, that the CCI was not in alignment. So if I was looking at the OR node, yeah, if I was looking at the OR node and then I look at this, I can go, oh well, yeah, I don't see my filter output, right? So my filter output's missing. Yeah, so there was no. So that bounce got filtered out. Right. There, so I can fix the scaling on this, and so now it makes it a little easier, more intuitive, to be looking at those the filter output. Yeah, so as price is coming up here, right, I can see that, I can see my short output telling me that the CCI is overbought, so that this bounce, would get recognized, but this possible bounce would not get recognized. I don't see my output there. Right. And then over here, yeah, I can see, right, prior to the bounce, I do get that filter output there, and then actually get the bounce. All right, yeah, so there's the original bounce that we started working with, and there's the second one after it. Again, so this, yeah, this looks messy, but, we didn't get a clean bounce here, but I can see from my output, that the filters would have allowed a bounce if we'd gotten a clean bounce there. So I can see my filters there. Right. Again, over here, the filters would have allowed a bounce there, but probably there wasn't enough clearance there. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like price just kind of consolidated, and so the separation got narrower and narrower, and we lost that 5-point separation, before price came up and hit the moving average. So, but that didn't work out to be a good one anyways. So yeah, there we go. Yeah. So if we look down here, right, we got a signal, but also we can see, right, that the CCI and the EMAs were, the filters were all set up, to allow this bounce signal there. All right, I think that about does it. I think that's as far as I can kind of go with this. It looks like Dean is satisfied. All right.